eccentricities as for her philosophical views. Although she spent most of her life in England, she spent 1 year visiting the University of Chicago, where much later I learned of the following event that transpired during her stay, an event that illustrates the prudential value of being a virtue ethicist. If you spend any time in Chicago, you will soon have locals tell you when and where it is and isn't safe to walk. Anscombe, however, apparently didn't care much for others' advice. On one dark evening after a dinner, she was walking alone along one of the less populated streets in the Hyde Park neighborhood. Predictably, a stranger abruptly approached her and demanded money from her, threatening her with a weapon to show that he was truly serious. But although Anscombe believed in charity, she did not give the man what he demanded. Instead, she berated him for treating a visitor to Chicago so rudely. Befuddled by her trenchant ethical criticism, the would-be mugger did not have a plan B, and so did not actually harm her. But Anscombe and the mugger soon fell into a pleasant conversation about rudeness and politeness, right and wrong, and other topics practical. Spurred on by the discussion, the man berated Anscombe for being foolish enough to walk all alone in such a dangerous neighborhood. But he offered to escort Anscombe back to her apartment so that no one else would try to mug her. And so they sauntered back to her place. Kindly, if not naively, she invited him in for tea.
That was story number 1. Story number 2 comes from me. Okay, so Harvard philosopher Robert Nozick loved 2 things: fast cars and natural rights. And according to a story he told one of his former graduate students, who later conveyed the story to me, he once had the opportunity to combine these 2 passions and to save a few dollars in the process. Nozick had been pulled over for driving 73 miles per hour in a 50-mile-per-hour zone. And as the police officer was preparing to write him a ticket, he noticed a copy of John Locke's 2 Treatises of Government sitting on the passenger seat. It turned out that the officer remembered having read and enjoyed the book in college and asked Nozick what he thought of it. Sensing an opening, Nozick made his move. In the version of the story that his former graduate student tells, Nozick said something along the following lines to the cop. You know, it's one of my favorite books, and I think Locke is right, that the government must always be careful not to violate the natural rights of its citizens. In fact, if you really do like Locke's book, he said, you should realize how wrong it would be for you, as an agent of the state, to write me that ticket. It's clear that in the state of nature, I would have the right to move around as quickly as I wanted to, as long as I didn't interfere with the rights of other people to do the same. And I wasn't interfering with anyone else's rights while I was driving home just now. A legitimate state would prohibit things like theft and murder, but it wouldn't punish people for driving fast as long as they were respecting the rights of everyone else. After a bit of back and forth, during which Nozick explained a few details about the Lockean proviso, made some derogatory comments about his colleague John Rawls, the police officer decided to let Nozick off with a warning. Nozick continued on his way home, driving only a little bit more slowly, happy that he had saved a few dollars, and even happier that he had kept those dollars from ending up in the hands of the government. And finally, our 3rd story comes from Justin Weinberg.
All right. Back in the 1990s, an episode of the series Seinfeld had Jerry dating a woman who always wore the same dress. She wore it when they met by chance at a store, on all of their dates, and so on. The dress had a white top part and a black bottom part. The plot revolves around why she does this and whether she's wearing the same token dress each time or whether she has a closet full of them. Like Superman, Jerry says. You may recall that episode, but you may not know where that idea came from. Also in the 1990s, the actor John Turturro was preparing for a role as a philosophy professor. Serious actor that he is, he thought it would be good to see what philosophy professors are really like. Through a friend, he was able to sit in on a philosophy class for several weeks. But not just any philosophy class. This was the famous colloquium course jointly led by Tom Nagel and Ronald Dworkin at NYU, with Eric Parfit as a regular participant. Now, Eric Parfit is an interesting guy, a wonderful philosopher, a kind man, but with some idiosyncrasies, including that he wears the same thing almost every day, a white shirt and black pants. Turturro noticed this about Parfit and talked about it with another participant in the seminar, Larry Temkin, who confirmed that Parfit pretty much always wore the same outfit. One night, Turturro went out with his friend Jerry Seinfeld, and the topic turned to Superman, one of Seinfeld's favorite topics. They were discussing superpowers that Superman did not have because they would be utterly useless. One example of this was, alas, super philosophy powers. The conversation then turned to the NYU seminar and how Parfit wore the same outfit every day, white shirt, black pants. And that's where Seinfeld got his idea for the woman who always wears the same dress. Tutoral's role was eventually changed to a physics professor in the movie 13 Conversations About One Thing, and just one question remains, whether Parfit wears the same token shirt and pants over and over, or whether he has a closet full of them, like Superman.
Your options briefly. We've got Eric with the story about Anscombe and the mugger. We've got me and the story about Nozick and the speeding ticket, and we've got Justin with Parfit and the story about the pants and the dress. Which one do you think is the real story?
Philosophers are all really crazy. The more famous, the more eccentric. But it's got to be the Anscombe one.
And Eric, do you want to tell him? Is he right?
You will have Alistair's voice on your voice.